Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today, whether you're here live or watching the recording later. My name is Allie. I'm Director of Communications for Face It Together. I will be leading to the discussion today, and I'm joined here by Lori and Joey, who will introduce themselves shortly. Just want to go over those couple quick housekeeping items. So, for those of you who may be unfamiliar, Face It Together is an addiction wellness nonprofit. So we offer professional peer coaching to those impacted by alcohol and other drugs, and that includes loved ones. So if you'd like to learn more or maybe get connected with one of our peer coaches, you can do that at wefaceit.together.org. During today's webinar, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A button. You can do so anonymously if you'd like. And then lastly, these webinars are a benefit to our Fit at Work program. That's where we partner with employers to offer our professional peer coaching as a mental health benefit to employees and their family members. So coaching is completely confidential. So if you're watching this, maybe you've seen our materials in your break room or onboarding packet. That means your employer believes in this approach and they want you to be well. So please don't hesitate to reach out for help if we can help. So let's get started. We're talking about kind of all about early sobriety in that journey. Does it get easier? That's a question we see a lot. Does sobriety really get easier? So before we do that, let's do some quick introductions. Laura, if you want to start us off and tell us a little bit about you and a little bit about your addiction journey.
My name is Lori. I'm an addiction wellness coach with Face It Together. I am 15 years well from methamphetamine. I also did some prison time. Um, and now I'm giving back to that population from my lived experience. And it's a very rewarding job. So I love it.
Thank you, Lori. And Joey, be introduced.
Yeah, so my name is Joey. I'm also an addictions wellness coach here at Face It Together. I have 8.5 years of clean and sober time. In my teens and my early 20s, I really struggled with alcohol and drug abuse. And it definitely kind of ran its course, and it wasn't good and it wasn't a good scenario. And finally I found sobriety and I was able to sustain that sobriety and grow as a person, and now I get to coach people through addiction here at Face It Together.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and we're going to get all into that and really dive deep into some of those early days too. So, um, Joey, if you want to start this one, what would you say the hardest part of early sobriety was for you?
I would say the hardest part of early sobriety was the cravings. As soon as I started to stop drinking alcohol, those cravings were still there. And just really trying to abstain from from drinking and using drugs, that first, maybe 30 days or so was definitely the most difficult part for me, because I was so used to ingesting drugs and alcohol in order to, make myself feel better. Not having that crutch was, I would say, the most difficult part.
Hmm. And what about you, Lori?
I would have to say the most difficult part for me was not the first withdrawal, couple weeks, not the staying away from it, but the time from when you're staying away from it to the time where your body heals itself.
Mm,
I had a really difficult time because our bodies aren't creating dopamine, and you don't have any joy in your life until your body starts creating its own again, right? So it was that period. And for me, it took almost 2 years for my body to be normal again. And I tried so many times, and it was that period where you just don't have the energy or the brain function to even get out of bed. So you relapse because it helps you to get up, go to work, and function well.
yeah.
And I had a hard time sustaining sobriety so my brain could heal. I wasn't giving myself enough time.
Mm,
Um, and until I finally learned after trying about 5 times
mm,
that it can work. You just need to hang on for that give your body some time to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you both for sharing. And we'll definitely want to get into both of those things a little bit more kind of throughout as we talk today. Because I think it is important for us to talk about some of those realities, right? That it can be really hard. And then hopefully we're going to end in a hopeful place and let people know that yes, it does get easier, it does get better. But yeah, talking about some of those more difficult pieces, I think just yeah, it's just the reality, especially as we talk about, yeah, cravings, what your brain is doing, your brain is healing, all that stuff. Um, so, Joey, to go back to, you were talking about cravings. What was, what were some of the strategies you used to kind of overcome cravings in those early days?
Oh boy, that's a great question, Allie. I think in my experience, well, one of the times I was in treatment, and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't find any alcohol or drugs to ingest. So I had to be physically removed from the substance, I think, but when I wasn't in treatment and I came off alcohol and drugs, I think um, to kind of move on from those cravings, I used exercise. That was really helpful to me. Running was
Mhm,
something that, got my endorphins going and was able to kind of ease those cravings a little bit. And then I think a lot of it was just kind of sleep and accepting the fact that I'm not going to drink or drug, and if I can accept that, then it's just kind of a battle of willpower. It's definitely difficult, but it took discipline.
mhm. Yeah, and Lori, I know you've talked about exercise before too, as part of your kind of recovery journey, overcoming some of those crazy cravings. Um, Anything else you want to share about kind of your craving strategy in early sobriety?
So when I first took meth out of my life, it, it it was really hard. I had to have some friends help me to get through that first withdrawal period, which lasted probably 7 to 10 days.
Mm,
Um, and then after that, after I kind of withdrew from the substance, um, it was just weeding those people out of my life, right? Weeding people out, knowing where to go, where not to go. And then exercise also helped me through that last long stretch. When my brain was healing, I learned that exercise gives you that second wind, as people call it. And that's how I got through. If it wasn't for exercise, I don't think I would have healed as fast.
hmm And when we were chatting earlier this week too, you mentioned those little dummy suckers.
Yeah.
Just like get a big bag of those and something to do
Yeah.
with your hands, something, yeah, just to kind of maybe replace some of that muscle memory of drug use. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. I probably went through about 3 bags of 100 count of dummies. I gained a little weight, but it was successful.
Hmm
So
Yeah,
for
and
me,
that's
for me, it was having to do something with my hands all the time.
hmm
Um, so just to keep, like you said, muscle memory, you got
hmm
to replace that. So that's what I did. I replaced it with dummies,
hmm
dummy suckers.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I've heard this maybe was more specific to alcohol, but could probably apply to other substances as well. I've heard other coaches say, especially during an alcohol craving, you may be craving sugar, right? So drink a big glass of water, eat something, take a cold shower. Just some of that kind of replacement could help with some of those really acute cravings because they shouldn't last very long. I forget how long typically, but some of those strategies can be helpful for folks. So, Lori, do you want to talk about, you shared a really beautiful moment, like it was a very sounds like it's very strong in your memory. There was a distinct turning point for you um, when sobriety started to get easier. And so I would love if you could share that with us.
Oh yeah, I'll never forget that day. So once you stop using and you've been like away from methamphetamine for a while, and it might depend on how long you have used as to how long that period will take for your brain to start functioning properly. But during that time, it was really miserable. Like the only time I felt good was after I ran or after a good workout. And then must have been about maybe a year and a half. I woke up one morning and I could hear the birds chirping outside and the sun was coming up and it was just a beautiful day. And I wanted to live because I didn't prior to that. It was a miserable time. Um, and I remember that morning so clearly in my head because everything was beautiful again.
Mm,
And I knew right then and there I was going to make it.
hmm.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Yeah,
I get
able to take
goosebumps every
in.
time. Yeah, when
Yeah.
I talk about it, I get goosebumps because it literally was a turning point in my life where I knew I could succeed.
Mm, hmm. Able to really like take in that beauty and appreciate it and be in the moment. And it's not to say you don't have hard days, because of course everybody does, but I think that's just a really poignant example of yeah, of the beauty that can come in sobriety. And Joey, your experience was a little different in terms of if we're thinking about like that turning point or maybe it wasn't an exact moment for you, but how did you notice sobriety getting easier over time?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it just came with time, right? I think for a while there, I had what I would like to call an obsession with alcohol and drugs. And, in sobriety, I still had that obsession, and I was just kind of doing the best I could to, function in society and, not use. But at some point, I think about maybe 9 months into my sobriety, that went away, and I no longer thought about drugs or alcohol anymore. And, that's when I experienced freedom. Things got easier for me. Um, it was definitely a difficult path, but, as soon as I stopped thinking about alcohol and drugs being the solution, then, things started to get a little easier.
Yeah. Yeah, that tape wasn't constantly running. It wasn't, all about alcohol anymore. Your brain was able to kind of move on from that stage, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you both for sharing. And yeah, like I said, I'll say it over and over again today, but I think there's so much about that journey that's really hard, but really beautiful. And the payoffs of that we're going to talk about too more. But before I go there, so Laura, you've kind of brought up this like this time where your brain needs to heal, even when you're in sobriety. And I think it's really important to talk about, it's called the post-acute withdrawal period. Sometimes we call it like the gray period. And I think it can be really hard when someone who's, like yourself, who struggled with addiction for years, tried to get sober multiple times, you finally make this big decision, you're doing the right thing for you, but you don't feel very good.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just a really unfortunate reality, but I think it's important to talk about it and then to say that it does get better. So, is there anything else you want to share about that time or kind of what's happening in the brain as it's healing, just so we can paint that picture for folks?
Yeah, so the first couple months was really hard. I had family involved. Everybody knew I wanted to be well, and so everybody chipped in and kind of helped me through that really critical first couple months, keeping people away, telling people, arguing with people, get away from her. She doesn't, I had a whole community helping me. And
Mhm.
it was after that where everybody went away because they knew I was going to do well on my own. Um, and it's even hard just to get out of bed every morning. You just don't have the energy. And I can't express to people who are trying to get well how difficult that is going to be. And I think people need to hear it because once you get through that, it's going to get better. You get out of bed and you keep going every day, exercise a little bit more and more every day, and you're going to win because that first couple months is horrible. It is, like I said, you just don't want to get out of bed. Like I was sleeping 15, 18 hours a day, getting up, eating, and just did not have the brain function nor the energy
Mhm.
to function, and it was really difficult. And I think people should be aware that you need to prepare for these and make a plan.
Hmm.
Um, and it can be done. And exercise was really a big part of me overcoming that period of time. And yeah, so it's hard, but the payoff is so rewarding to
Hmm.
have your life back. And yeah, it can be done.
Yeah. And I think it's really, um, and the brain is so fascinating. I am no expert in brain science. Let me say that right at the top. And there are a lot of resources I think that do a good job of kind of explaining what's happening inside. And so the best way I can describe it is kind of throughout addiction, your brain is being flooded with these is artificial the right word? Or,
Yep.
these artificial neurotransmitters, right? So serotonin, dopamine, and then your brain, which is now flooded with these chemicals, decides, well, I don't need to make this anymore because it's being provided for me. And so what's happening when you take that away is your brain is not producing that the way that it used to, and so it needs time to build that back up. Did I do a good job of describing that, Lori, from based
You
on your
did.
research?
You
Okay,
did. That was
wonderful.
accurate. Very accurate. Good job.
Great. I think it's sometimes helpful just to give people that understanding of like this is chemically what's happening too.
Yeah.
Joey, is there anything, does that resonate with you? Like, did you kind of experience that gray period? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first came off substances, kind of like Lori was mentioning, it was difficult to function, you know. I just had no energy, I had no drive, I had no real ability to do anything, you know. And that was definitely a difficult period to get through. And
Hmm.
like Lori had said, exercising definitely helped.
Yeah.
Um, I think, yeah, I think it was miserable because I was so used to being high, and drunk.
Hmm.
And when you take that away from me, that's when I start to feel normal and emotions, right? And I'm not used to that. So kind of dealing with being sober was difficult in that sense. I wasn't comfortable with it, you know.
Mm,
I wasn't okay when I was sober. That was my experience with it.
yeah. Yeah, and that, right, that's another piece of the puzzle because I think in a lot of ways, and we'll end with this because I want to end with that hope and talk about all the beauty of wellness. Because wellness does open that door for that light and being really present. And of course, it also opens the door for the other negative emotions, because there has to be both, right? And so, yeah, that's a really good point, Joy, that you now have to kind of cope with that, with all those other things that are coming up that maybe you've been numbing for years in some cases. So, we've talked a little bit about kind of some coping strategies for craving specifically, but I think just more generally, we've talked about exercise. Are there any other, tools, strategies that you both have used to kind of cope during whether it was early in sobriety or even now today? What's part of your toolkit? Lori, do you want to start?
Yeah. So my toolkit right now contains my number one supporter is my mother. She knows me well when I'm having issues. I can call her and tell her that, Mom, I'm not doing so well. And she will make sure she's there. She definitely knows the struggles that I've been through. So having those people that you can be totally honest with, whether if it's good or bad, that's definitely needed in a wellness journey. Um, I also have a craft. I create Native American regalia for my family, and it keeps my mind off anything negative. Creativity, anything where you're creating and you're keeping your mind busy. That'll be good for you. It's just doing something else to replace that time when you're having negative thoughts.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Any other tools, strategies on your end, Joey, that you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this tool doesn't work for everyone, but I used AA and the 12 steps. I went to meetings. I got a sponsor and I worked the program and I did all of that. And that was really beneficial, I would say, to me staying sober and, being able to, be around, like-minded individuals, because in AA, everybody there has a problem with alcohol or drugs. That's why they're there. So being able to be around a community of people, looking to do the same thing you're doing, which is staying sober, was pretty helpful.
Hmm. That leads so perfectly into my next question, which is all about relationships. So I would love to hear how your relationships, either, with yourself or with others, kind of changed, throughout that sobriety journey. Joey, if you want to kick things off for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say my relationship with myself was probably the biggest thing that changed for me. I would say I was pretty codependent on drugs and alcohol. So, as soon as that you remove that, I'll start to have a relationship with myself again, and get to really know myself and who I was when I wasn't using. And my relationships with my parents, my mom, my dad, my step parents, my brothers, sisters, my siblings, my family, all of those relationships improved as well. As soon as I stopped drinking, my relationships improved. However, my relationships with my friends kind of died. They were still out there drinking, doing drugs, and doing whatever they were doing. So
Mhm.
therefore, I didn't want to be around that. I didn't want to be in that environment. So my relationship with them kind of went off the deep end. That's when I really got to know myself better. So I would say overall, getting sober improved my relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what about your experience, Lori?
Experience was the relationships that were closest to me in my drug use um, completely came to an halt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are family members and loved ones that I do connect with, like through the phone, hi and bye, I love you. And that's as far as it'll go because I know that I can't put myself in a space that's not safe for my wellness.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you set boundaries, and eventually people learn that they need to respect them. So you got to mainly treat people how to treat you when you're going through your wellness journey, and you have to make it very clear. And then the relationships that work for me now and mean something to me, those are the people that truly love me and they're there for me. So I know I have a good team.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Wonderful. I think those were most of my questions for now. I don't see any audience questions coming through, but like I said, I want to end on that light and that hope. So I'd love for you both to maybe reflect on what's something you get to experience now that you didn't while you were struggling with addiction. Lori, if you want to start.
First of all, I can't express enough how thankful I am that I get to be this person today. I started using smoking marijuana at a very young age, and I never really knew who I was
Mm,
until I stopped using meth. And I'm so grateful for everybody that helped me through that journey and that are with me now. Um, it's not been easy. There were some tough times.
mhm,
So, no, I just ran out of words. It's just, I can't express how thankful I am enough to be here today. It's changed me in ways that I never thought I could live this way ever. And here I am living a good life, and it's well worth it.
that's wonderful. And we're grateful for you, Lori. Thank you. Joey, what does life look like for you now? What do you get to experience that you didn't in the past?
Yeah, well, first off, I want to say I get to experience life again, like everything that's involved in life, because I think with the path that I was on, I was not going to be able to experience life very much longer. It was either looking at death or prison, one of the two. So I think being able to appreciate, the fact that, I have a job, I have relationships, I have two dogs, and I get to hang out with those dogs, and that's awesome. And everything is just really, really meaningful, I would say today my life is just about as good as it could be. I never thought I'd be able to make it to this point in life where, I found happiness, I found peace of mind, serenity, and all of these things. And, I think those all came by about of just staying away from drugs and alcohol, I get freedom, I can do whatever I want. I can go camping, I can go on trips, I can go do like kayak, I can river raft, anything like that. And it's all a journey, it's very much appreciated being able to be free, and being able to chart your own life, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much. And for those of you watching, so the answer to this question, does sobriety get easier, is yes. And we've talked a lot about a lot of different things today. And so if you are someone who is maybe in those early days and feeling like you need extra support, we are here for you. We have been through it. And so we can kind of walk alongside you and walk into that light together, which is just always so beautiful and gives me goosebumps. So thanks everybody for joining us, and for Lori and Joy for reflecting on those early days and sharing hope here at the end. If you have any other questions for us, if you'd like to meet with a coach, please visit wefaceit together.org. We've got a green button in the corner, Get Started. You can fill out a web form and we will be in touch with you and learn how we can support you. So thank you all for being here and have a great rest of your day.